Tonight's talk is going to be inspired, as most of them are, by my experience in life. I guess they all are, but this is like from what's been going on. I announced at the beginning of the year that one of my goals was to do a triathlon, and I am no triathlete. I am not good at any of the things involved. I can't run very well. It physically hurts my body, more than probably the average person, but less than some of you, I'm sure. Bike riding, I haven't ridden a bike outside of probably 10 times, I think, since I was a child. I used to ride bikes a lot when I was a kid. Never once had I ridden a road bike, and it was a little bit teetery in the beginning, let's just say. And swimming, I can technically swim, but also technically cannot swim. Like staying afloat, I can doggy paddle, and that's about it. This came about because somebody who I'm really close to runs triathlons all the time, and I watched her do a triathlon once, and I thought, that looks so hard. I'm going to do it because this is how martial arts warps your perception of reality. It makes you think that you can do anything, and you kind of can. So I'm going to talk more specifically about the swimming part of my training tonight. But first of all, it's kind of with all of them. And I've actually done about this much training with running because my ankle does not allow me to do it right now. That'll be a really great excuse for if I do terribly when I do the triathlon. But it is all part of practice for me. And really all of life is part of practice for me. So I'll just say at the outset of this, if I'm talking about swimming, I actually used to hear every once in a while, like my Sifu or see one of my other martial arts teachers in the past or present, they would talk about going to the gym or doing something else, and I would think, what? They're doing some other kind of some other kind of activity besides martial arts? And I'm not going to go very far out on a limb and say that it's very likely that for them, just as it is for me, this is like an extension of practice. So when martial arts is your life, everything else that you do, you kind of see through that lens. And for me, with swimming, for example, which is what I'm going to talk mostly about tonight, swimming is just another opportunity for me to practice martial arts. And it's got to be that way, or I would have given up a long time ago. I've noticed that when I fold things into my practice, that it is a lot easier for me to push myself and have the right kind of mindset. Because swimming, I suck at swimming and I don't particularly like it. I don't like getting in the ocean. It's way too cold. And I really could drown at any second. If I don't show up for class one day, that's what happened to me. But I really like working on my breathing, and I really like working on getting my body to move and coordinate in the right way, and all of that stuff in the way that I can see how it helps me in martial arts. And I could even see how swimming is an important tool to have for self-defense. Maybe somebody's attacking me and I'm going to run into the ocean and be able to swim, or actually not die if I do find myself in a situation where I need to swim. So what I'm going to talk about more is like my experience specifically with swimming, and it has been interesting. So I started training for this triathlon, which, by the way, probably isn't going to happen, but I'm just going to do my own triathlon. If the thing is canceled, I'm going anyways, and I'll do it by myself, which would be safer in some ways and probably more dangerous in the other ways. But I started training for this at the beginning of the year. And I got into the pool and I realized that I don't float. So, and this is not a matter of learning like the technique of floating. I've got no part of my body floats. I've got skin and bones and hair, and all of that stuff sinks. I guess my brain would float. If you took it out of my body and stuck it in water, it would probably float, but everything else sinks like a rock. I don't mean like I get in the water and I slowly start to float. I mean I get in the water and I go directly to the bottom of the pool and I stay there. And I have to push up, and I only float if I've got like a full breath of air in my lungs, which makes it hard because to breathe, you got to push air out in order to bring new air in. So that was really interesting. I spent all of the time up until the last couple of weeks just being able to float. And let me tell you, that makes things difficult when you're trying to do anything and it is all that you can do just to stay alive, like on the surface of the water or whatever situation it is that you're in. It makes it very difficult to get better at anything. And this is the position that many people find themselves in every day. And some people, it is literal physical survival. I can't find enough food to eat. I can't find a safe place where I'm not getting shot at. I can't find a way to live without constantly having to stress about that. And I will say that this experience is, an experience that I have chosen, and most people don't choose to be in a situation where they have to fight for their lives daily. And I cannot even come close to imagining, but the closest whiff that I've gotten of it is this: like I get in the water and it's sink or swim, and you got to basically fight. For me, since, and this is not me complaining about like how rough it is, I'm sure many people have a harder time swimming than I do, but like that was my experience, and it really made me think a lot about these people. And I'm sure that all of you guys know somebody in your life who actually is, especially now in the circumstances that we all find ourselves in as a society, are worse off. And just like, how can I actually keep my job, keep food on the table, provide for my family? And there are people out there who are starving themselves so that they can feed their kids. It is so hard to make any kind of spiritual or personal progress when that is the reality that you find yourself in. So let's take a beat and just really appreciate the fact that, look, if you're able to listen to this talk, you're better off than the vast majority of people in the world, and likely the majority of people in this country. So that's one thing. You will at times find yourself in practice feeling like it's all I can do to stay above water. And in some of the classes, some of you guys who have actually been to the dojo and you're wearing the face mask, the initial class where you're trying to make it through the whole class, you actually feel like you are drowning. And I've had that experience a little bit, and I kind of got past it. Teaching is not quite as hard as practice, but it's harder than it looks. But when I'm in the water and struggling to breathe, I've really started to recognize that, like how important air is. And again, there are people right now who are on ventilators. There are people who have asthma and who are struggling no matter what the COVID situation is. But if you can't breathe, there's not a lot that you can do. So we want to be able to train ourselves to to be beyond that kind of situation as often as possible. And for me, I kind of cheated with swimming. I'll admit this right now. If I got in the pool today, I would probably still sink. When I'm in the pool, I have to kick like crazy to stay afloat. And part of that is bad technique, and part of that is just I don't float. But I found a cheat, which is I get in the ocean and I wear a wetsuit. A wetsuit makes me float, and the ocean makes me float. The water has more density. I don't think that's exactly the right word to use for it, but the salt water is actually more dense. Makes me float. Wetsuit makes me float. And now I can, if things are getting really rough, just flip over on my back and I just float there and breathe. And sometimes I actually need to do that. And it is really nice to just be out there in the ocean on your back, floating and breathing. And it's like there's nothing that matters. It's a really wonderful feeling. So when I was able to make that little adjustment of jumping in the ocean with a wetsuit on, it actually made it possible for me to focus on my form in swimming. Now it's not just constantly a struggle, where I'm having to kind of arch my back and do all this crazy stuff just to be able to breathe. I can, with a little bit of forward momentum, I can actually do something that looks kind of like gliding through the water, and I can just turn and breathe, and it's really nice. And still, some days, it doesn't work that way. So today I had one of these experiences. I'm in the water, and I arrive a little bit late. I've been going in the water with this swimming group. And it's nice to have people who are there in case you start to drown who can pull you out. There are no lifeguards on duty right now. And it's also nice just to be there with a group of people. As you guys have noticed in your practice in the dojo, when you have somebody who's there waiting for you, who will notice when you're not there, it makes you more likely to show up, and it changes your experience of it. So I'm in the water, I'm a little bit late, and the people are doing these laps. I think they're doing 300 meters back and forth between two buoys. And so somebody kind of gets back, does a turn, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to stay with this person. They're all faster than me. I'm not very good at swimming, and I'm not fast. But I'm like, let's turn it up today. Let's just see how much progress Sifu has made. And so I tried. I was pushing, I was kicking hard, and I was feeling okay for the first minute. And then I started realizing, like, this isn't going well. And I was pushing myself out of the realm of comfort, but beyond that, beyond discomfort, into the realm of, actually, if I did that for much longer, I would just start breathing in water, and that would be the end of me. I have noticed, again, with the difficulty of breathing when your face is mostly in water, you cannot exert yourself as much as you can when you can just breathe whenever you want to. So I can run and bike, not very well, but I could do that for a long time, and I can get a nice pace, push myself, and it's okay. In the water, one of the biggest changes for me has been getting used to the same basic thing that you guys have experienced trying to do class with a mask on, if you're doing that, which is a higher, more constant load of CO2. So when you are breathing in oxygen and then breathing out CO2, and it kind of stays in your mask, you constantly have a little bit of a higher level of that. And it is actually safe for most people to continue breathing and working hard, you should be a little bit more careful of it. But it is actually a trick that our brain plays on us, where it makes us feel like we're drowning. Now, in some cases, again, with some people, if you have an existing condition, you should be more careful. So this is not me saying, slap on a mask and go out there and go to town and ignore your body, because that's stupid. But for most people, when you start to feel that sensation of drowning, it is not a lack of oxygen. It is that your lizard brain is kicking in and feeling that rising level of CO2 and saying like, oh, this is bad. We're not breathing the amount of the mixture of gases that we're used to, basically, and it starts to make you feel really bad about what you're doing. So when you're swimming and you can't just breathe in and out evenly, you're taking that breath, and then it's a quick inhale and then it's a slow exhale, right? Unless you're really breathing kind of every stroke, which I don't think it's kind of frowned upon. I'm trying not to look that desperate in the water. So I'll take a breath, I'll take 3 strokes, and then I'll take another breath in, and then I'll do 3 strokes. So when you have a faster inhale and a slower exhale, you are effectively keeping that CO2 in your body for longer. And for me, I noticed this really starts to go haywire when I kick. When I kick fast, and this is what I have to do in the pool, which is why I cannot swim very well in the pool, is when I'm having to use so much oxygen, I'm producing that CO2, and I'm really starting to gas out quickly. So that's what happened to me today. I see there's this guy who, we're about the same age and about the same, build, whatever, and I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm going to go for it today. And so I start kicking. And I got about 1 minute into it, and then I just started breathing in water. I noticed that I'm not really able to push myself that hard and keep the correct technique of breathing and swimming. And of course I had to laugh at myself, because this is just another example of the ego. The ego pops in and the ego says, let's go. You can be as fast as that guy. Like, push yourself, get as good as him. And as soon as the ego steps in, the ego doesn't really care about technique. The ego does not really care about anything other than beating other people. And if that's the case, that's when things get sloppy and dangerous. And you guys have definitely experienced this in class. It does not have to be in sparring where you're like in direct competition in such an obvious way. It might be I'm lined up next to somebody else, or you guys are in Zoom and you see that little person up on the corner of your screen, or maybe the senior student who I'm spotlighting for you, and you're like, okay, let's try to be as fast as this person, or let's try to make our technique look as good or better than them. It is an interesting thing, the ego, because it can make us show up. It can spur us to try harder, but in the moment, the ego makes us drown. The ego makes us forget about technique and puts us into dangerous situations. So if you have sparred with somebody and your ego is in charge, as soon as you let your ego be in charge, you start getting hit. And you start whiffing on your own strikes, because the ego is something that is in the way between your body doing what you've trained it to do and the actual opportunity that there is to do it. So what we want is to be in Mushin. We want as close to it as possible, as little ego involvement as possible. The opportunity arises, our body takes it. There's nothing that stops us from taking the opportunity. We respond immediately. As soon as the ego is there, we get this kind of like revved up, all of this, extra emotion and thought involved, and we start getting attached to stuff, We mess up, we get attached to it because we really want to win. That time that we got hit or that time that we missed our partner, we're attached to that. And now we're thinking about that instead of just being in the present moment. And we can only be in that flow state, and we can only be, our best self when we are totally present and unattached to anything. So what happened to me is I'm starting to swim, and of course I get like that first little hankering of, oh, am I pushing myself too hard? My face is in the water, and it's like my breath wants to go in too early because my body thinks it needs that air. And so the water is starting to come in through the nose and through the mouth, and I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't get my head out yet, stop it. And then the next breath, halfway through that exhale, I'm starting to think, oh my God, it's happening. I'm starting to drown here, or I messed up that last one. It's going to happen again. And so then it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. It's that cycle that you get stuck in. So it is like a cycle. When you are identifying as the ego, and you're letting the ego be in charge, it's like you've kind of put yourself in the washing machine, and you're just tumbling in that cycle, and you're going to drown in there. What you need to be able to do is just open up the door and step out and just get like that breath of fresh air. That's what our meditation is. That's what practice and the ability to be present in the moment is a breath of fresh air that brings us back to the moment where the ego is not in charge. I asked a couple people earlier in the day, like, what am I going to talk about tonight? Because I had no idea a couple of hours ago. Tanya mentioned something about the idea of like a community, a spiritual community, but it brought to mind my experience also of swimming this morning. So you've got these people who are there for you, that when you show up, they're looking out for you, they're interested in you being there and you being better. And it is a very different energy from trying to show up and do things by yourself. So we, of course, want to be able to show up when you almost drown in the water. You want to be able to show up the next time and do it by yourself and not get stuck on that last time. It's very difficult. You want to be able to have a crappy class and show up the next time and be able to do it by yourself. And I don't know, have any of you guys tried to do the recorded classes yet? Tanya has. It's a little bit different, right? Nobody's there looking at you. Nobody knows that you're there. And it's funny because what you're looking at is the same exact thing that you'd be looking at as if you actually showed up to class. But somewhere in the back of your mind, that there's nobody there who actually sees you there, and you're not actually participating in the live energy of the class. It's a little bit different. It's different enough for you to kind of allow yourself to step back. Or, you would never just like quit class if you were in the middle of a class with me, but if you're watching and you get tired, you might just like, I'm going to go ahead and click pause. I'm going to go walk over here for a second. I'm going to get a drink of water. And I know that you do this because I've done a class live on Zoom and a recorded class. And sometimes I'll just be like, I don't like this part. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a couple minutes. I'm going to go till after the sprawls are over. I would never do that with sprawls, but maybe you guys would. When you have that community, you have that group of people that are there, wanting you to succeed and doing it along with you, it feels very different. And sometimes we need that. Like we need somebody to be there to pull us out of the water if we start to drown. Or you need that kind of feeling of safety that if you did start to drown, somebody would pull you out of the water. And that allows you to push yourself harder. So I am smart enough or experienced enough at swimming to know that if I went out there and just went as hard as I possibly could without somebody there watching, it would probably not be a good idea. And so I don't. I go out there with people and I see them ahead of me, and I push myself to try to keep up with them. And I also try to recognize, wait a minute, this is ego right here. This is ego pushing to the point where it's dangerous. And so You step back and you focus on technique. And this is one of the nice things about having a group of people is you are very seldom going to be the worst. You might be one of the worst. Some days you might be one of the best. But you can see that, all right, if I slow down right now and focus on technique, this is not me just being a total, this is not something to really be ashamed about. This is not something for me to get stuck on where I feel like I really am doing worse than everybody else. And let's also be real, some days you will be the worst. And if you focus on that and you get stuck on it, that is ego, and that's going to make you worse in that moment. But if you are even in that situation and you remember, okay, this is my ego. If I need to placate my ego by reminding it that there are people that are worse than me out there, I can deal, right? I can be okay with just slowing down, focusing on technique, focusing on, my nice even strokes in the water. And even though today I'm the slowest, I know that this will make me faster and me better than I am today. Tomorrow, the next time I get in the pool, the next time I get in the ocean, I will be a little bit better. And that is sometimes going to be enough, sometimes not going to be enough, but we hope that it is. When you are in class and you're feeling the worst, sometimes you can let that go by just getting caught up in the energy of the class. And of course, this is easier when you're in person, but you can still do it even over Zoom. So allow the energy of this community that we have to, buoy you up. And this is like the saying, a rising tide raises all ships. So when we are all kind of pushing ourselves, everybody else in class feels that energy, and everybody is doing a little bit better. Whether or not you are the best or the worst, or you are just you in this class, you're still doing a little bit better. This is the end of the talk. I've gone on for plenty, but let's keep this in mind when we're meditating. Meditation feels like, from the outside, especially if you're doing it on your own here at home for the first time, feels like a very individual experience. And if you make it that way, it is. And it is going to be very difficult to sit and be as still and as focused as you really can be if you go into your meditation with the mindset of, I'm doing this for everybody else. I'm doing this for everybody else in the world, and you can think of it like I'm sending out my good energy and my good vibrations to the rest of everybody else meditating. I was on this really great meditation app once that actually showed me just people using this app. There were like, you log on, it's like, here are all the 100,000 other people who are meditating right now at the same time using this app. That was cool. But I'll tell you right now, it doesn't matter what time you're meditating, where you're meditating, there are a ton of other people meditating at the same time. And if there is such a thing as, feeding off of each other's energy, they're doing it. So send them great energy. Don't send them sucky meditation vibes. And you're meditating for everybody else that you will ever come into contact with for the rest of your life, and everybody that you'll be in a relationship with, and everybody that you will ever have the opportunity to impact. This is what this meditation is for. And everybody else who's meditating is also doing it for the same way, whether they know it or not, for the same reason rather. They are making themselves better for the greater good, for the the spiritual community. And for everybody who doesn't think of themselves as being spiritual at all, for the person who cut you off on the road, so that you don't then allow the ego to get into place and be like, I'm gonna cut them off. because that never ends well. So you're doing this for everybody else, and they're all doing it for you. So you might be sitting alone physically in your room now, but you are not alone. And let's also recognize that meditation, it is hard to make spiritual progress. I'm going to say that I think that the majority of people, even if they're still kind of struggling to survive, can meditate. And this is one of the reasons why I love meditating is almost no matter what your situation is, you can do it. Whether you're going to have a good meditation or not, or whether you're going to be able to sit there and not just have your mind being bombarded by all of the stresses of the ways that you need to, survive after your meditation is done, that's another story. But you can sit and meditate. Most people can. Let's try to recognize that our meditation is that thing that we can do to help us survive and to help other people survive and to help thrive and get beyond just the feeling of it's everything that I can do just to stay above water. You might have 5 minutes that you can set aside from your crazy life, where all of the rest of the life is just staying alive and staying above water. But for these 5 minutes, you can just be and you can breathe. And that breath of fresh air can take you out of that spin cycle that you're in and just bring you to the moment. In this moment, none of that stuff matters. None of that stuff is impacting you. And we need this time. All of us need this time to set aside the ego, set aside thoughts of survival, and really just be. All of those things will be there for you to tangle with when your meditation is done. So now forget about all that stuff, because that's kind of a downer. Focus more on the thing I was saying before. Good energy coming from everybody who's meditating around the world. You imagine that you sit there, and if you move and you mess up your meditation, you're messing everybody else up, and you're also, every time you breathe in, you're breathing in everybody else's really solid meditation. There are monks and nuns out there sitting in a cave or a temple in Tibet or whatever is really important to you, and they're meditating right now, and they're having an amazing meditation, and you can just sit and join in with them right now. So let's do that. Sit comfortably.